At the heart of the Staffordshire moorlands lies the tranquil valley of the River Churnet. Here, from the Middle Ages, iron was made, though only in the late 18th century did it become a major industrial centre. In 1772, the engineer, James Brindley, proposed a route for a new branch of the Trent and Mersey Canal to run from Etruria to the limestone quarries at Caldon Low. But the coal masters urged a different route to serve the Cheadle coalfield, for which they would pay a quarter of the cost. The new route ran through the Churnet Valley and needed a tramway between Caldon Low and Froghall. Down this would come huge quantities of limestone to be burnt at Froghall or loaded onto barges for more distant lime kilns. Heavy work, hot and dusty, but a livelihood for hundreds of men. With the opening of the canal, new industries could flourish. Between Froghall and Cheddleton there were lime kilns, coal and ironstone mines, copper works, a paper mill, and flint mills, sending goods to any part of England reached by the wider network of canals. But central to our story are the Consall lime kilns, built for John Lee of Consall New Hall, with stone quarried from the neighbouring hillsides. By 1816, his lime kilns were complete, and the company could advertise
lime of a very superior quality from Caldon Low limestone, delivered from covered boats at any place on the line of the canals.
With steep hillsides, the Consall Valley was ideal for lime kilns. Like all high kilns, they needed a loading platform at the top, a wharf at the bottom, and a ramp to connect the two. Limestone arrived by canal, was loaded onto wagons and taken up on a tramway, while coal came from a neighbouring pit. Alternate layers of coal and limestone were loaded in, and the kiln was ready for firing. When the burn was complete, quicklime was raked from the bottom, packed into barrels, and loaded onto the waiting barges. Huge quantities of lime were needed by the building trade in the potteries, in Leek and more distant towns. Farmers found it invaluable, for the acid soils of the Staffordshire moorlands were in constant need of improvement. Most went by canal, but the rest went through the Consall estate on Lee's private plateway, grandly known as the Railway. By the 1830s, Lee had overreached himself, and by 1840 he was bankrupt. His estate, including the lime kilns, was put up for sale. But recession hit hard, and 4 years later the receivers were listing
6 valuable, well-constructed lime kilns, which are now doing a very profitable trade. The North Staffordshire Railway Company, in the event of them taking part of the property, are to make a branch railway or siding from the main line to the lime kilns, which will enhance the value of them.
The company did indeed take part of the property and honoured their agreement. But the kilns were in decline, and in 1899, when repairs were requested, the railway company refused to foot the bill. The heyday of the lime kilns was over. The wharf was silent, its trade undercut by larger and more accessible kilns. With abandonment came decay, and nature reasserted itself. Seeds settled in crevices, saplings grew into trees, wildlife scuttered through the leaves, and birds sang and nested in the newly formed woodland. By the 1990s, the lime kilns were listed, a headache for the RSPB, who must now maintain them. An advisor was called in to find a solution. Could they be cleaned and stabilised? 3 filled with limestone and a 4th left open for viewing. With an estimate of £100,000, who would fund it? The local authority had its expert, willing and able to do the necessary spade work. Limestone would be needed, machines to load it, and a water supply to clean the stone. Tarmac owned the original source of stone and was willing to supply more. JCB would lend a machine to load it, and the project would be coordinated by the Historic Buildings Trust. With funding in place, it was time for action. Spring had been chosen, but early enough to avoid the nesting season. Tarmac's gift arrived, 550 tons of stone chippings in 25 lorry loads dumped at the foot of the kilns. Without Lee's tramway, how was it to reach the top? JCB had a brand new machine with an exceptionally long arm which could solve the problem in one lift. Up went the scaffolding, impressive in itself. Everything was going to plan. 3 arches were bricked up and the main work began. Then disaster struck. The contractors went into receivership. Fortunately, Prestec could take over at once, and though the faces changed, the work went on. Cleaning was a priority, but first the vegetation had to be cut back. Not everything was so easy. Massive tree roots were left. Parts could be sawn away and the rest injected to avoid regrowth. Chemical weed killers would be harmful to wildlife, so high-pressure water cleaning finished the job. The result was impressive. Even the mason's marks were visible. The kiln linings were in a very poor state. Heat from the lime burning had melted them. Relining was essential for the kiln that was to remain open. The job was difficult. The bricks had to match the originals, and the double curve required special skills rarely used in modern bricklaying.
These are the original bricks, the sandline mortar, and these are the bricks we've got to marry up with them.
The stone parapet needed repair. The original quarry was long since abandoned, and the nearest match was at Crow Gutter Flint Mill, which was being dismantled. Funding called for local involvement and a permanent marker. The children of St Leonard's School, Ipstones, with Phil Hardacre, were soon at work designing and making ceramic tiles for the project.
It's a bird that feeds underneath the water, isn't it? And they live at Consall Forge, don't they? Yeah, that's absolutely brilliant. Really good. Brown rats.
A visit to the kilns was essential. What better way than by canal, in a traditional narrowboat?
Quite handy having a narrowboat.
The sun shone most of the way, and the children chattered as they took in locks, water, bridges and birds. Finally, like the limestone, they were unloaded at the wharf, devoured a picnic and set off to look at the kilns.
But Faith is going to tell you all about how the lime was produced and the history of the place. And all I'm going to say is this is where the piece of work is going to be situated. It's going to be put here, your lovely tiles, and they're going to be there for way longer after I've died, okay? So it's going to be there maybe 100 years or more. So
you can bring your grandchildren down to look at it.
Back at school, the project took shape with ideas based on their recent visit.
Because if you don't, you'll make the colours go funny colours. Yeah, because where's that one? Yes, if there's a spare one left over, do another one.
I need a sponge.
What I need is all these doing today so I can get them into my kiln. So you need grey, the bucket, and just dribble the glaze over the surface of the ceramic, and you'll see that the glaze sticks to the clay. These pieces are all actually fired and finished. They're going to be stuck on this beautiful seat here, which is going to be in front of the lime kilns.
On site, work neared completion. Could the base of the display kiln be cleared without damaging the archaeology? Water had drained from above, carrying dissolved lime, which solidified everything in its path. After an hour or so, Faith concluded that this was too hard to remove and was best left alone. Now for a final site inspection. Time to show donors how their gifts had helped and congratulate the workers.
I'm an architect with a local practice, Christopher Taylor Design, and I've been working with my fellow trustees in coordinating the restoration project for the Consall lime kilns. I'd like to welcome you to this sort of formal completion, if you like, or handover of the finished product. And I'd like you to introduce the various partners and people that have been involved in the project. Obviously there's myself and Faith Cleverdon and John Newell, who are fellow trustees of the Leakham Moorlands Historic Buildings Trust. And then we're on to the contractor. David, do you want to introduce yourself?
Well, my name's David from Plastic. We've worked on the project from the end of March to the end of May.
I'm Barry Killian. I'm representing Tarmac, who supplied, I believe, most of the stone to this project.
My name is John Rice from Rice & Partners Chartered Building Surveyors. I've been appointed by the Leakham Moorlands Historic Building Trust to administer the refurbishment and stabilisation works to the kiln.
My name's Nick Chambers. I'm the warden for the Nature Reserve down here for the RSPB.
Hi, I'm John Palmer from JCB. What we did in this project, the kilns needed filling, and it's quite difficult because of the height of them to find what equipment with which you can fill them with the hard core and the cement which is needed to make them secure. It was fortuitous that we'd been developing a brand new loading machine, the kind of thing that you see on farms normally, and we'd been developing one which actually had the height to be able to reach to the top of these kilns and to fill them up. And so the very first one that we produced actually came here and was used to pick up the hard core and the various other elements which were needed to fill the kilns up and to make them safe and secure. And we're very pleased and proud to be part of this wonderful event, really, and this wonderful improvement which has happened here.
Years ago.
The cat really doesn't want to miss out.
Nothing is uneventful. Modern technology took a tumble and had to be rescued. With the throne installed, the children returned to unveil it themselves, chattering like starlings, but quietened by food.
Okay. One each, so no greedy guts, so take on two. Oh!
We leave the lime kilns restored to their former stark beauty, a testimony to their builders, to professional expertise, to craftsmanship, and to the volunteers, both young and old, who helped in their restoration. As for the valley, it can settle back to peace, a nature reserve with these silent remains as a permanent reminder of its industrial past.